welcome the investigation by the Attorney General?
Oh, yeah, sure.
New at 5, Governor Tom Wolf responding to Target 11's questions about a data breach. Target 11 exclusively revealed that Insight Global exposed the personal information of more than 72,000 Pennsylvanians. Target 11 investigator Rick Earl joins us live here in the studio. And Rick, I understand you have more breaking news just in from the state's top investigator.
Yeah, David, indeed. Another big development out of Harrisburg. Just minutes ago, Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro announcing that his office has now officially opened investigations into that data breach on what he says are multiple fronts. And today, the governor had some very strong words for the company at the center of that data breach.
It should not happen. That was wrong. The company admitted it, understands that, I think took actions, and we've made our decision that we're going to hold them accountable.
Governor Tom Wolf today speaking out publicly about that massive contact tracing data breach first reported by Target 11 2 weeks ago. The governor reiterating today that Insight Global, the company that received a $29 million no-bid contract to do contact tracing, won't be renewed in July.
I don't think there's any disagreement that what happened is wrong, that anything that compromises confidential information is wrong. We do everything we can at the state level to make sure that doesn't happen.
And despite an email obtained by Target 11 that shows a former Insight Global employee alerted the state health department to data security concerns in February, the governor claims they were unaware until we showed them the compromised personal health information last month.
I don't think they did have knowledge of this, but I mean, I've read the reports that they did, but I have seen no evidence that they did.
And when asked about the acting health secretary who cited the class action lawsuit as the reason for backing out of a Senate hearing on the data breach Tuesday morning, the governor had this to say.
Maybe I said too much here too. I'm not sure what, I mean, I think everybody has to be sensitive to the rights of people who are going through legal issues. So I'm not a lawyer.
Now, in a statement just released minutes ago, the Attorney General said that, quote, any allegations of sensitive personal information being mismanaged or leaked is a serious matter. He declined further comment. Now, the governor also told me today that he would welcome that investigation by the state Attorney General. That is the very latest reporting live this evening in the studio. Rick Earl, Channel 11.